Welcome back to another episode of Inside Multifamily Access Control, sponsored by Salto. With me, as always, is my friend Colin. Colin, how you doing?
Doing well. Glad to be back for
Yeah,
first episode since the holidays. So excited to be back and chatting about 2021.
100% agree with you too. So, with that, at the start of the year, last week we said we got a whole bunch of new content coming. So, this first one that we're going to talk about really is almost like a level setting conversation about what's going on right now in multifamily when it comes to smart locks. And really, if you were to look, most of the conversation when it comes to smart locks are at that front door, and then you get to the tenant door. And we somewhat skip everything else that's in between there, but there's really a need for all of those to work together. So, if we're to sort of high level discussion about it. And we've actually created something on the Inside Multifamily Access Control website now that's a topography map of the different areas that are on there. But if we're to highlight some of those, if we were to look at it, you could take the front entry like we talked about. You got elevator, roof, parking, business center, gym, the living space, of course, exit doors, a whole bunch. But I guess, Colin, seeing that no two doors are the same, I don't know if we want to stack rank these. I don't know if that's like the right thing to do, but if we're to talk about sort of value creation though, of like what are the high level benefits, if you would, of having sort of an inclusive control of those doors, like what would you say is the benefit overall that you get? Because, and also I guess juxtapose that to what is historically, what do you see? Like, how do they handle those doors that are not typically on the system? But now, if you want a complete ecosystem, would be.
Yeah. I think that it's really hard. I don't think we can stack rank them, plain and simple. Also, we talk a lot about kind of these new lifestyle differences within these buildings, right? You think about traditional multifamily 12-month lease versus co-living versus student housing versus active living. And that's going to change, what the value is that each of these additional doors bring to the table. But all of them have these additional doors. You think, you mentioned the front door and the unit doors, but you've got pool gates, you've got gym doors, you've got lockers now within the gyms, you've got working spaces in these buildings, you've got community areas in these buildings, and I think that lifestyle that is going to be in that space is going to dictate the value of each one of those doors. But I think historically, what you've often seen is the common area doors treated as access control, and the units treated as unit doors. And so then you get into issues with Div 8 versus Div 28, and how do we start to bring that into an ecosystem, and how do we start to think of all of the doors at the same time, as opposed to front door, unit doors. Okay, I've got my smart doors set up. Oh, now what do I do with the rest of these doors? No, the portals or the doors or whatever they're going to be called in the future,
Openings.
yeah,
Yeah.
that discussion has to happen as a whole, and they're all going to be a part of the ecosystem going forward.
Yeah. In my mind, it comes back to what we've been talking about, and we talked a good amount about last year. It's the experience that you have, right? So it's the overall, the idea of people moving, as well as the data now that's coming off of that. Because now, if you think about, before it was just about keeping the wrong people out of the gym. Now it's about giving you data of understanding occupancy and whether it's been cleaned and things like that, right? So now you have this new wellness and maybe even giving you a heads up before you even go down the elevator to know if it's there. And so still foundational around security, but high level, awareness, added value beyond just access control. Now it's, all the different parts that it can do. And as maybe the fragmentation that we had before, didn't allow some of the synergies to happen around what that use case could be. Because again, I think we just treated it as a product of a utility that had to be there, to now it's seen as, how do you have a value added experience that you would look at that entire thing holistically as a thing that is either going to increase the value proposition or it's going to decrease the value proposition, which is primarily the experience that somebody's going to get. And we're at that point now with the systems and how they work, we've moved far enough along that you can think about them that way. It's almost like an exercise. You have to start doing that. And part of the reason why we wanted to show that topo map was we wanted to make some more of awareness that some things that seem obvious, like, oh yeah, pool gates, that's part of it. But if you don't see it kind of all together, you may not think about it because you're focused on the resident door.
Right. Well, and you know, you even get into further stuff like laundry and maintenance on laundry and things of that nature. And I think you're seeing that evolution of experience not just being resident experience. If it's just purely resident experience, maybe the front door, elevator, and unit door, you know, is enough. But now you start to think about the visitor experience actually also impacts the resident experience, right? If I've got to get up every time I have to let somebody into the door, I have to put a door stop in the community center door when I have my friends over for the gathering, that sort of stuff. All of a sudden, these visitor experience, these maintenance experience ultimately ties into the resident experience. And so what door are the maintenance folks using? What door are all of these other people using? And now that door count starts to creep up into what really factors into that resident experience. And I think you're just seeing the natural evolution of identifying where else can we improve that experience for our residents.
Yeah, and what's interesting you mentioned there too is to think about everybody is a visitor now, just like in the commercial world we're seeing with what's going on with COVID. The same thing being how can you create the experience to be sort of good for everybody that comes there, as well as having the appropriate people there, so the layers of security that are needed to be there as well. That's gonna take, you know, and we were going to talk a little bit about on the CES side on this as well. And I'm curious to see if people are seeing that opportunity now and are going to start to invest in it more than we've currently seen now. Or, you know, I'm curious to see big tech getting more involved is in that as well. And where they're sort of like seating themselves in the resident unit with voice. Do they expand from there with the idea that I could have somewhat of a seamless experience throughout? And the doors are seeing nothing more than like pathways, right? Like it's almost an aspect of wayfinding, that if they solve that side of getting people to point A to point B, utilizing data of understanding, you know, there's less people. If you take the stairwell, it's a 6-minute walk and there's nobody there and there hasn't been anybody there for 30 minutes, to you can use the elevator, there's a 2-minute wait, but there's 6 other people that have been, you know, things like that, where the lock, the access control side of it becomes secondary to the experience that's being created. And we as an industry focused on the safety side might miss the actual opportunity to where you can still deliver safety as it's redefined now by just focusing attention on it versus focusing on just fire ratings.
Yeah.
As an example.
No, and I think that's the balance, right? That we've talked about this before, of the gadget versus secure elements and things of that nature, right? And we've talked about access control versus access care on some of the terms that you've put on it and stuff.
I appreciate you mentioning that one thing.
Yeah, of course. Anything I can to get you some shout outs there. But it's the, how far can that go before all of a sudden people go, wait, but that's not secure. And so how do you give that experience, that seamless, that touchless, whatever that is, while still showcasing and still providing that level of safety and security to those users? And so it will be very interesting to see of how do you make it a pathway where there's the experience that is desired while maintaining the aura, is a horrible term because it seems like then the security isn't there, but while maintaining that sense of security where people feel this pathway is enhancing my experience while maintaining my security. And I think we have to have the blend of new tech, new thoughts, new ideas, new definition of safety, while maintaining some of the core elements of what the access control industry and the security industry has always been about. But it's a blend of, it's got to be a blend of those two things, in my opinion.
I would agree, but I just wonder if maybe we've overarched on the definition of safety, or to hold it too tight into one area. Where if we were to take, feet on the street, people that aren't from our space, and did another voice of customer, that if they were to define what safety meant to them now, whether those use cases would have morphed and changed to where, what we've defined as it being safe, does it equal what the general public and the people that are going through the space define as safe?
No, that's a great point, and I do think you're right of a continuum almost, right? Of, do we need to apply the same level of security in every deployment of access control, or what is that flexible continuum, and what does safety mean at each stage and at each level, and how do we as an industry become flexible with that? Because you're right, I think we've been fairly rigid in that of,
Which
hey,
is okay. I get why.
Yeah, but that doesn't meet our standards, so we can't do that. Well, our standards aligned with that deployment and that specific request? I think that's a fair question to ask. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's funny because it leads, when we had the conversation about access care and access control, that there seems to be a desire to have a binary conversation around. It's like either security and that's control, or it's insecure and that's care, or whatever else you want to call it, convenience, or whatever the other term is. Where, my belief is that if we don't, as an industry, start to figure that out, big tech and other people will, because I do believe the end user experience and desires and that stakeholder will outweigh what we believe. And then the other side of that is that there's this belief that if we or the public or whomever is the we says the care or convenience side, then we must not care about the security side. When I don't think that that's what people are saying. I just think that there's until proven wrong otherwise, which I'm happy to be, I'm not going to get off the train. That is, I believe technology can bring a level of not only convenience, but it can also deliver the safety side of what we had at a greater rate than what we've been doing now. Because in my opinion, and I used this example online with somebody the other day, and I think it's relevant here, is that, for instance, a lot of the systems that are used in these things have been around for 30 years. And they don't have the ability to utilize things like new technology, like artificial intelligence. I'll just use that one as an example, right? So if artificial intelligence, and one of the things that it can do is the systems learn as they go, and they morph and they change and they get better over time. That's sort of like a different type of a system that actually, the worst day of that system is the day that it's installed, and the best day is in the future, versus the historical way that our industry does things is the best day for our system is the day that it's installed. And every day that it goes, it actually gets older.
Yeah.
I like to believe that what we need to start doing now, and one of the byproducts of digital transformation and the rest of it, is that software allows these systems to get better, in fact. So actually, that's how you can deliver convenience and security, because the definition of what security is actually has changed.
Yeah. I love what you just said. That's that idea of day one was the best. How do we make day one the worst, right? And get smarter. That's awesome. The other piece, tying it back to this topo map that we've put out, and as we add additional doors, if we just look at, entry door and unit doors, and we go by, the old minimum requirement, right? Well, we've now pushed the minimum requirement to the front door. But if what we're really trying to protect is predominantly inside the business center, or predominantly inside the gym, or whatever, or the pool, or whatever it is, as we add additional doors or portals or whatever it is into the system, we now can improve the care or the convenience at every door up to that point.
Yeah.
And that ties right into that building of a system versus a keep everybody out first, and then once they're in, they have access. No, let's build it so that at every stage they don't really experience a no until they shouldn't.
Yeah, it's a different way to totally view it. So cool. All right, we'll put a bow on this one for today. I think we covered a handful of topiks and ideas. That the intent here is to spark conversation. So
Yeah.
hopefully we did that. We went everywhere from the overall map of not missing anything to access care, access control, to how systems get better, to security versus convenience. I love it. So I appreciate Colin. Thank you as always, and we'll catch you in a couple weeks. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. Take care.